They said Earth was done. The Galactic Council had voted. One by one, representatives from a dozen species, those who looked down on humans like we were nothing more than wild animals wearing clothes, raised their glowing fingers, tentacles, and claws in agreement. The sentence? Total planetary disarmament, a forced surrender of Earth's defenses under the guise of galactic peace. But everyone knew what it really was, a slow execution. They didn't want peace, they wanted us gone, controlled, tamed, forgotten. We tried to negotiate. Our diplomats bent over backwards, swallowed pride, offered terms, begged for compromise. I was there, watched the vids from the front lines. Our ambassadors laughed out of the chambers like clowns at a royal court. They called us the apes who built toys of war and unstable primitives with dangerous toys. But that was before the Hillary struck. A rogue action, the council claimed later. Unsanctioned aggression. But we knew better. The Hillary didn't sneeze without council approval. They dropped plasma charges across 3 continents, wiped out New Europe, all of Northern Asia, and half of the African belt. Over 2 billion dead in the first 5 minutes. No warning, no declaration. I lost my wife and both sons in that flash. 1 second they were laughing in the kitchen, arguing over toast. The next, gone. Nothing but static on the comm and a blast wave that flattened everything within a 100-mile radius. I was stationed off-world, orbiting Mars. By the time I got back, Earth wasn't a blue marble anymore. It was a cratered corpse with smoke spiraling into space like bleeding arteries. And then, they had the balls to blame us. The council issued a statement, said Earth provoked the attack by harboring extremist technologies and failing to comply with disarmament protocols. They acted like we'd nuked ourselves out of stubbornness. No, that wasn't stubbornness. That was a massacre. The president went silent. Our fleet? Grounded. Communications? Jammed. They thought they'd broken our back. But they didn't count on us getting back up. And they definitely didn't see what was coming next. Because something ancient snapped in humanity that day. Something buried under years of peace treaties and global cooperation. Something older than diplomacy. Older than civilization. Rage. The kind of rage that doesn't want justice or negotiation. It wants blood. And we had one man left who could lead us there. Commander Derek Holt, retired, washed up, labeled a war relic by the council after he punched a Galari ambassador in the face during a trade dispute. He didn't ask permission. He didn't hold press conferences or give stirring speeches. He just vanished. And so did 5 destroyers from the Martian defense grid. 3 weeks later, the Hillary homeworld turned into a burning red smear across quadrant maps. No survivors, no signals, just silence. The council panicked, demanded an investigation, screamed violations of intergalactic law. But by then, it was already too late. Earth had awakened something feral, something they didn't expect from a species known for music and coffee and art museums. We weren't interested in proving our innocence anymore. We were out for vengeance. And the man leading us was no longer a diplomat. He was the architect of the counterattack that made the stars themselves tremble. The first fleet he rebuilt was called Retribution. No politics, no flags. Just a crew of the broken, the grieving, and the unforgotten. Ex-special forces, pilots who'd lost limbs, hackers burned by council intel viruses, soldiers marked dishonorably discharged for punching back when their units were slaughtered. He gave them one job: strike back with brutality. No warnings, no rules. When the council sent out peace envoys, they didn't even make it past Jupiter. Their ships went dark. Their message beacons were found a week later, spinning slowly in the void, broadcasting only 2 words on loop. Not enough. And it wasn't. Because Earth wasn't just looking for justice anymore. We were looking to end the game entirely. They thought we'd be afraid. After everything, the bombings, the betrayals, the smug council statements wrapped in fake concern, they still thought humans would roll over and beg to be spared. But Earth didn't beg anymore. Earth prepared. In the shadows of Mars's moons, in the cold dark where surveillance probes couldn't see and where no approved construction yards existed, Earth's true counterattack began. Holt didn't speak to the public. He didn't form committees. He built a war machine the likes of which no species had ever seen. And I was there when the first monster was born. Her name was the Warden. Not a ship, not really. She was a floating dreadnought powered by the kind of illegal fusion cores the Council had long since banned, lined with reinforced black alloys that didn't reflect light or heat. She didn't blink on scanners. She didn't send greetings. She didn't negotiate. She erased things. I was a systems engineer once, used to work on orbital satellites and defense tracking. After the attack, my department was buried in debris, and most of the team turned to ash. But I kept getting these encrypted pings, dead codes we used during the war in Titan. Nobody used them anymore. Nobody should have been able to. Then I heard Holt's voice. Cold, direct, no apology. If you're still breathing and still angry, come to Phobos. Coordinates attached. Leave your badge at home. I went. And I wasn't the only one. The dockyards hidden under Phobos's surface were crawling with ghosts, men and women I thought long dead, engineers with missing eyes, ex-Marines with shaking hands, blacklisted AI specialists, and shipwrights banned for using inhumane weapon systems. We weren't heroes. We were the left behinds, the punished, the ones the Council called unstable minds. And Holt needed exactly that kind of madness. No bureaucracy, no red tape, just vengeance. The Warden wasn't the only one. Over the next 3 months, Holt's rogue fleet tripled in size, not by volume, but by ferocity. No ship was built for defense. Every one of them was armed with AI-driven railguns, stealth torpedoes, adaptive cloak fields, and viral override worms designed to crash enemy command systems within seconds. And worse, they were crewed by men who had lost everything. No salaries, no medals, just names etched into steel walls, wives, sons, daughters, brothers, all burned in the Hilari strike. Every weapon we mounted carried a personal engraving. Mine said, "For Eli, age 7, laughed like thunder." I didn't even cry carving it in. I was dry inside. Holt's first target after the Hilari homeworld wasn't a military installation. It was a trade hub, Eoris Prime, center of the Veari Consortium, a planet known more for glittering towers and artificial oceans than war. Why hit a civilian world? Because the Veari signed off on the Hilari attack. Not officially, but the data Holt's hackers pulled from captured comms showed they funneled weapons, encryption keys, and movement maps. That made them collaborators. And Earth had stopped distinguishing between warmongers and the ones who held their coats. No warning was given. One night, the skies above Eoris shimmered with auroras, beautiful, unnatural patterns across their atmosphere. The civilians thought it was a celebration. It was Holt's jamming field. 10 minutes later, the Warden dropped into low orbit, and in less than 30 seconds, the capital city was reduced to a smoking crater. Then came the message. Not from a president, not from an Earth diplomat, but from Holt himself. Unfiltered, unedited, broadcast across every galactic frequency. His face filled the holoscreens. Gray hair, old scar down his temple, eyes like knives. You forgot what humans are. You thought killing billions would tame us? That burning our cities would turn us into obedient pets? You thought wrong. We are not here for negotiations. We are here to end you, world by world, system by system, Until the last one of you screams in a tongue we no longer translate. This is your fault. You started it. And Earth always finishes what it didn't start. He smiled. We've only just begun. And he cut the feed. The council erupted in panic. But they weren't prepared for war. Not like us. Their fleets were bloated bureaucratic messes. Thousands of ships run by chain-of-command nonsense and treaties. Ours? Fast, silent, cruel. They tried to send peace offers. Holt shot them down. They offered reparations. Holt sent back the burnt wreckage of their couriers. They threatened a united retaliation. We jammed their war council feeds and hijacked their emergency lines with one simple phrase. You killed our children. Now die like men. One by one, Holt's fleet struck. Quick, brutal, and always leaving just one survivor behind, barely alive, to tell the story. Word spread. Ships began deserting their posts. Colonies surrendered before a shot was fired. Entire systems collapsed under the psychological weight of it. Because this wasn't war, it was punishment, and the galaxy wasn't prepared to be judged by the very species they once mocked. I remember the day the Council tried to trap us. They coordinated a secret assembly on Lyorak, a neutral moon far from the war zones. Over 40 Council officials, their highest-ranking admirals, and strategic minds all gathered for what they called a decisive containment plan. They thought it was hidden, untouchable. But they didn't know Holt had someone inside. One of their own, a Zalvaran defector, who'd lost her human mate in the first strike and never forgave her kind. She leaked the location. Holt didn't send a fleet. He sent one ship. The Requital. Stealth-class, heatless engine design, undetectable by all known tech. No torpedoes. Just a drop pod, loaded with 5 men. I knew 2 of them. Gravediggers, we called them. Not soldiers, not assassins. Just men with nothing to lose and no intention of coming back. Their orders? Cut the heads off the beast. They breached the chamber mid-meeting. No mercy, no speeches. The council chamber turned red. Only one recording survived. Grainy, low resolution, shaky. It shows one of the gravediggers holding a counselor by the throat, blood splattered across his own face. This isn't about winning, he growled. This is about reminding you that Earth is not prey. They executed 36 high officials. No trial, no delay. The shockwaves from that hit shattered the Council's unity. All across the galaxy, species began pulling their fleets back. Some tried to denounce the Hilary. Others suddenly remembered how they'd opposed the initial strike. Everyone started eating their own words, throwing each other under the bus. But Holt didn't care. This wasn't about politics. This was about the burn. The same kind of burn I still felt every night when I closed my eyes and saw my son's drawings still stuck to the fridge in what was once our kitchen. I wasn't the only one. Everyone in Holt's fleet carried ghosts. And we weren't finished. The thing about fear, it spreads faster than fire. After the Lyorak hit, everything shifted. The Council didn't just lose command, they lost control. Entire species that once flaunted their loyalty to the galactic order began turning inward, locking down borders, purging suspected sympathizers. They were afraid of Holt, of Earth, of us. But they didn't understand what was really coming. Fear is only the beginning. The real destruction starts when trust dies. And that was exactly Holt's next target. Not ships, not soldiers, but the fragile web of alliances the galaxy depended on to stay functional. He didn't need to fire a shot to collapse a civilization. He just needed a whisper in the right ear, a forged communique, or a conveniently leaked war transcript suggesting betrayal. Let the bureaucrats eat each other alive. It worked. The Veari accused the Norshi of conspiring with Earth. The Norshi retaliated with orbital strikes. Meanwhile, the Drethar Confederacy declared neutrality, only to be accused of harboring Holt's fleet, which sparked a mutiny inside their own ranks. 57 outer colonies burned in less than a week, and not one human hand had touched them. We watched from the dark. Holt called it the Scorch Doctrine. Burn them with fear, burn them with doubt, burn them without touching them. I ran infiltration during those weeks. We'd intercept comms, decode them, rewrite them, then send them back. Messages from admirals to presidents, rewritten to sound like treason. Sometimes all it took was a single word removed, a name added to a kill list. Then we'd sit back and listen to the screams echo through the void. Funny thing is, I never liked this kind of warfare. I used to believe in clean lines, enemies, allies, truth, lie. But the day my son's heart stopped beating in a flash of blue fire from the Hilari sky, my moral compass stopped working. There was no north anymore, just pain. And Holt understood that. He fed it. His speeches were never about strategy. He didn't talk like a politician. He didn't promise medals or glory. He'd just gather us in the dark bays of our black-hulled ships, eyes hollow, voice low. They thought they could erase us, turn us into a cautionary tale. So let's become one. Let our name taste like ash in their mouths. Let them wish they'd killed us completely, because what comes next makes extinction feel like mercy. We didn't cheer. We just nodded. We were past noise, past celebration. The only thing that moved us now was the sound of another alien scream cut off mid-sentence by fire. The real shift came during the siege of Hestelis. It was a council stronghold, shielded by a triple-ring planetary defense grid, orbital fortresses, and home to their most advanced AI warnet, Helix Prime. It was where they stored the archives of council law, galactic treaties, and years of interspecies cooperation records. And Holt wanted it not for the resources. He wanted it wiped off the map. The plan was suicide. A direct assault on Hestelis was like flying into the sun with wax wings. Every simulation said we'd lose 80% of the fleet. Minimum. Didn't matter. He gave the order. We split into 3 waves. The Warden and Requital took front. I was stationed on Korra's Vow, a stealth-class warcraft fitted with hull-crawling kinetic drills and deep-sea torpedo pods. The first wave hit hard. Sacrificial ships cloaked to look like flagships, drawing fire, pulling defenses wide open. The second wave tore through the weak points, gravity tethers, ion cannons, shield generators. But the third wave? Us? We went for the heart. Our pod latched onto the underbelly of Helix Prime's fortress core. I still remember crawling through the ventilation shaft, my hands slick with sweat and blood, pulse hammering like artillery. We had a singular objective: upload the override virus into their war AI and then detonate, not disable, destroy. Helix wasn't just their AI, it was their memory, their central brain. If we took it out, they'd lose everything. We uploaded the virus, triggered the core reactor, then ran like hell. The blast tore through Hestelis like a second sun rising. 3 rings of defense melted within seconds. Shield harmonics collapsed. The AI's last message was a frantic loop of warning sirens, failing code, and a corrupted digital scream that still haunts my sleep. We didn't just kill a fortress. We erased a civilization's center of gravity. When the smoke cleared, half the Council's inner systems were blind, deaf, and panicking. And Earth's flag, no longer stars and stripes, but a single burning skull etched in red over black, was broadcast over every remaining Council channel with 3 words beneath it: "You should have finished us." But not everyone on Earth was cheering. See, the deeper we pushed, the darker it got. There were whispers, soft ones at first. Survivors of our own species who'd gotten caught in the crossfire. Colonies that refused to join Holt, pleading for mercy, for reason. Some defected to the Council. Others just begged to be left alone. Holt labeled them compromised, and we burned them too. There was a moment, a crack in me, brief but sharp, when we hit the Arcadia outpost. It was a science station. Neutral, human-run, declared non-combatant, peaceful. They were helping with refugee processing for survivors, human and alien alike. Holt said they were leaking data. We surrounded the station. They denied the charge. No weapons, no shields, just med bays and children. Holt didn't blink. Compromise is treason. Send the drones. I watched the feed. Children screaming behind glass domes, scientists trying to shield patients. And then silence. Even the stars looked colder after that. Some of us started whispering in private, asking if we were still soldiers or just monsters wearing human skin. But nobody said it loud, because no one wanted to be next on the list. The final crack came with Operation Glass Halo. The plan? Strike the Council's last defense node, Arkan Core. It wasn't a city, it was a moon, a manufacturing hub that stretched beneath the crust, churning out ships, weapons, and tech for centuries. Its defense was automated. Its power source rumored to be a core siphon reactor, dangerous, volatile, banned under every galactic treaty. Perfect. We deployed everything. Every remaining warcraft, every orbital mine, every cyber ghost and drone swarm. The attack lasted 3 days. 3 full days of hell. I lost half my team within the first hour, another quarter in the reactor breach. Only 2 of us made it to the detonation chamber. That's when I saw it. They weren't building weapons, not just weapons. They were experimenting on humans, clones, hybrid splices, half-dead soldiers wired to machines, pumping neural code directly into Council tech. I saw one man's face twitching, eyes forced open by surgical steel, lips moving in silent pain as his nervous system fed into a targeting array. They hadn't just killed us, they'd used us. And in that moment, whatever was left of hesitation in me died. We didn't just detonate the core, we vented the atmosphere. We made sure nothing left that place intact, not even the whispers. And when the dust settled, silence, not the peaceful kind, the terrified kind. The Council had no more moons, no more cities, no more answers. The last official broadcast from the Council showed a trembling alien diplomat begging for terms, sobbing through a translator. Holt never even responded. He just sent back a single vid of Earth's night sky. Thousands of lights gone dark, memorial walls stretching across craters, names etched so deep the stone bled black. And underneath it, "This is what peace cost us. Now you get to pay." That's how Earth became a ghost in the galaxy. Not extinct, not defeated, feared. There's no Council anymore. Just fractured worlds too scared to rebuild, too paranoid to ally again. And Holt? No one's seen him in years. Some say he vanished into the stars with the Warden, becoming legend. Others claim he was buried beneath the ruins of Hestelis, still gripping the weapon that broke their gods. I don't know. All I know is this. The galaxy thought Earth was soft. They thought wrong. Because when the Council ordered our execution, they didn't kill a species. They resurrected a monster. The galaxy was quiet. Too quiet. After Arkan Core fell, there were no more countermeasures, no more fleets, no more grand speeches from the Council's trembling mouthpieces. The comm channels, once flooded with strategic chatter, political bartering, and lies, went cold. We'd silenced them. And yet, the silence didn't feel like victory. It felt like a graveyard. I remember sitting on the cold hull of Korra's Vow, helmet off, staring at the stars like they owed me something. They didn't shine the same way anymore. The constellations I used to trace with my boy's tiny fingers meant nothing now. We'd burned through the myth of peace and turned every light in the sky into a reminder, not of triumph, but of how far we'd fallen. Earth didn't celebrate. No parades, no reunions, because there wasn't much left to go home to. The planet was still scarred, oceans poisoned, continents cracked, cities nothing more than ash and stories. The atmosphere barely breathable. Most of humanity now lived off-world, in hollowed-out mining moons, orbiting station scraps, and crumbling refugee barges. We won the war, but we lost everything else. Even Holt disappeared. After the final broadcast, he vanished. No trace. No ship logs, no comms. Some say he died during the moonquake that split Hestelis in half. Others claim he slipped into dark space, no longer needed, no longer wanting to be found. I didn't care. I didn't need Holt anymore. None of us did. Because the rage that carried us through the blood and fire had nowhere to go now. There were no more aliens to kill. No more systems to conquer. Only the empty, echoing question. What now? It started small. Disputes over salvage rights, black market trades, rumors of phantom fleets still loyal to the old council. Then someone hit one of our recon ships. No survivors. Just a scorched insignia burned into the hull. Peace through order. At first we thought it was a joke, but the attack reports kept coming. Surgical strikes, comm relay disruptions, stealth bombing of our logistics hubs. Someone was reorganizing, and they weren't human. We thought we'd broken the council. We hadn't. We'd just shattered it into 100 desperate pieces, and now those pieces were fighting for power like vultures over a fresh corpse. I got dragged back in when Virex Station went dark. It was a neutral trade outpost. Mostly humans, some Zalvaran merchants, even a few Norshi who'd laid down arms during the collapse. Supposedly peaceful. They were found 2 days later, floating in a silent orbit around a dead sun. Bodies vented into the void. Every terminal burned. Whoever hit them didn't just want to kill, they wanted to erase. Same tactic Holt used, same brutality. But this time, it wasn't us. It was a response. Someone was taking pages from our playbook and turning it against us. I got a ping from an old contact, Dizar, a Norshi defector I'd fought alongside on the outer moons during Operation Glass Halo. Smart, untrusting, but he owed me his life. He met me in the ruins of a smuggler's moon near the CERN belt. Place smelled like rust and old blood. They're calling it the Restoration, he told me. Not the Council, something worse. Fewer speeches, more executions. I asked who was leading it. He hesitated, then said one word that sent a cold shard of ice down my spine. Harrion. I knew that name. Everyone did. Council Admiral, architect of the Earth disarmament vote. One of the few who'd survived Layarak by evacuating early. Rumored dead after the Gravedigger incursion. Apparently not. Apparently Harrion had watched the galaxy burn and decided to start over. He wasn't rebuilding the Council. He was building something purer. Leaner, less talk, more guns. Dazar slid a cracked data chip across the table. They've been cloning, recruiting, stealing your tactics, your codes, turning refugees into indoctrinated fighters. They call humans ferals now. You're not feared anymore. You're hunted. I asked him why he was telling me all this. He shrugged. Because I know what comes next. You're going to finish what Holt started. I want front row seats. It wasn't vengeance anymore. It was survival. We reassembled a fleet, not nearly as big, not as organized. Just those of us who refused to bow to any new regime, no matter what name they painted over the ashes. We called ourselves Ashborn, not a government, not a rebellion, just ghosts in the ruins of a forgotten war, carrying the last remnants of what Earth used to be. We hit their first base 6 weeks later. a secret cloning facility hidden in the rings of Nakara's Prime. They didn't expect us. We found thousands of cryo-chambers, half-grown soldiers with neural implants, muscle memory conditioning, false memories. They were building an army without souls, and they were using human DNA to do it. That's what broke me again. Seeing our own species turned into weapons by the same monsters who once called us primitive. They hadn't just feared us. They'd studied us, copied our rage, tried to program it into meat. We didn't leave any survivors, no data, no records, just smoke and a message broadcast in 50 languages. We are not yours to copy. We are not yours to tame. Earth is still watching. But deep down, I knew what this meant. We'd become what we hated. I looked at my crew, scarred men who'd spent too long in war, who didn't know peace, didn't trust silence, and I saw it in their eyes. If the restoration didn't kill us, our own need for war eventually would. There was no home to go back to. Just another enemy, another strike, another ghost to bury. I remembered Holt's final words before he vanished, spoken not in anger, but in that cold, steady way he always had when something real was coming. They think they've seen the worst of us. They haven't. The worst isn't when we're angry. It's when we've got nothing left to lose. Now I understood what he meant. We weren't fighting for Earth anymore. We were fighting because war was all we had left. Because peace meant sitting still. And sitting still meant remembering everything we'd done and everything we'd become. There was one last target on our list. Harrian's base of operations, codenamed Citadel's Wake, a fortified black station orbiting a dead neutron star. Shielded. Cloaked. Impossible to breach. But we didn't need to breach it. We just needed to crash something big enough into it. We found an old mining rig, 3 kilometers long, designed to tow asteroid belts. Rigged it with fusion charges. Set coordinates. No warning. Just fire. The explosion lit up a sector of space that hadn't seen sunlight in centuries. The station folded in on itself, pulled into the gravity well, crushed like a tin can under a boot. Harrian's final message before the impact was intercepted by our comms. Only 4 words. I made you monsters. No denial, no threats, just the bitter truth. After that, things fell apart for good. Ashbourne split. Some went rogue. Some tried to rebuild. Some just drifted into the black, hoping for an end. Me? I'm writing this now from a derelict outpost near the edge of known space. The war's over, but the galaxy still trembles when it hears the word Earth. Not because of what we were, but because of what we became. And in the silence that followed our brutal counterattack, one truth remains. They thought they could erase us. Instead, they created the very nightmare they feared most. I used to think war ended with a bang. Now I know better. War doesn't end with explosions. It ends with echoes, the kind that sit in your bones when the noise dies down and the smell of burned metal fades. It ends when you're floating in some forgotten corner of space, staring at your own reflection in a dead monitor. Wondering when you stopped being a man and became just another weapon that somebody else built. That's where part 5 of my life started. In the cold belly of a half-broken ship drifting over a nameless rock. My crew had scattered. The Ashbourne weren't a fleet anymore. We weren't even a movement. We were just survivors, pretending we still had a mission because the alternative, admitting we had nothing left, was too heavy to hold. The void was our only constant. The hum of the life support systems became a lullaby. Meals were tasteless nutrient packs. Sleep was a coin flip between nightmares and numbness. The war had become a reflex. And now, without an enemy in front of us, that reflex had nowhere to go. It just sat there, coiled inside. I'd lost track of how many weeks I'd been alone when a faint signal bled across my console. Not a distress beacon, not a council code, something older, something human. The message was a single word. Sanctum. No coordinates, no signature. Just that. I almost ignored it. But boredom and curiosity are cousins, and in the emptiness they start to look like hope. I fed the word into the ship's cracked nav system, cross-referencing what old star charts we still had. Sanctum didn't match any registered station, colony, or military grid. But there was a ping, faint, near the edge of the old Hilari sectors. I set a course. What else was there to do? Sanctum wasn't a place, not exactly. It was a floating shell, an old council biostation stripped down to bare ribs, wrapped in patchwork hulls of a dozen different origins. It drifted in the shadow of a dying gas giant, hidden by storms of ammonia and methane. No lights, no beacons. Just a dark outline against deeper darkness. I powered down everything except life support and drifted in slow. If it was a trap, I'd be dead before I even knew it. If it wasn't, maybe there'd be people. Real people. A voice that wasn't mine. Docking clamps took hold with a groan. The airlock opened on a corridor lined with hand-painted marks, not military insignia, not alien glyphs. Names. Human names. Hundreds of them. Some I recognized. Old Ashbourne call signs. Others were just first names, scratched in shaky hands. At the end of the corridor, a man waited. He wasn't wearing armor. No rifle slung over his shoulder. Just a faded jacket patched at the elbows. His hair was white, not from age, but from something deeper. Exhaustion baked into the body. His eyes, though, they still burned. I knew that stare. "You found us," he said quietly. His voice was like gravel dragged across steel. "Or maybe we found you." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. For a second, all I could do was stare. It was Holt, not dead, not gone. Standing in a forgotten station at the edge of nowhere. He didn't embrace me, didn't even smile. Just gestured down the corridor. "Come on, you need to see this." We passed through makeshift chambers lit by dim blue strips of scavenged LEDs. People moved in silence, men, women, children, human, alien. Some bore scars of war, some bore no scars at all, just the haunted stillness of refugees. They weren't soldiers, they weren't rebels, they were survivors. In one room, kids were drawing on the walls with bits of charred hull plating. In another, an old Norshi priest whispered over a sleeping human infant. I saw no weapons. No propaganda, no burning skull banners. It didn't look like a base. It looked like a graveyard trying to be a garden. Finally, Holt led me into a chamber filled with star maps, holograms flickering with old and new constellations, trade routes gone dark, council systems marked with red X's. "What is this place?" I asked. He exhaled slowly. "A holding pattern, a last chance." "For what?" "For us, for something after all this." I didn't answer. Couldn't. My throat was tight. He went on. "We burned the galaxy down. Don't pretend otherwise. We didn't just punish them, we infected them. We taught them our rage, and now it's growing in the cracks we left behind. The restoration, the clones, the ghosts, all of it is our shadow. If we don't change, there won't be anything left worth saving. Not for them, not for us." I wanted to laugh. Change? After everything? We were ghosts, weapons, tools of vengeance. There was no changing back, but Holt's eyes didn't waver. "Sanctum isn't an army," he said. "It's a seed. We take in whoever still wants something else. We teach them how to build, not burn. We teach kids who've never known a planet how to plant food. We show aliens and humans how to live without aiming a gun at each other." "You think that's enough?" I asked. "No," he admitted, "but it's a start." We sat in silence for a while, staring at the maps. My hands itched for a weapon that wasn't there. My instincts screamed this was weakness, a soft place waiting to be crushed by the Restoration's boot. But another voice, quieter, buried deep under years of blood, whispered, maybe it was something else. Maybe it was courage. I asked him why he called me here. He looked tired. Older than I remembered. Because you're like me, he said. You don't know how to stop. You need a fight to feel alive. I brought you here to show you another way before it's too late. I almost snapped at him. Almost told him I'd seen enough death, enough betrayal, enough other ways to last 3 lifetimes. But instead, I asked the question that had been eating at me since the war ended. Do you regret it? Everything we did? He didn't hesitate. Every day. But regret isn't the same as surrender. We were right to fight. We were wrong to let the fight define us. That's what I'm trying to fix before I die. I stayed in Sanctum for 3 days, watched humans and aliens repair hydroponic gardens together, watched children who'd never known gravity learn to walk in rotating chambers, watched Holt teaching a Norshi boy how to carve wood, not for weapons but for toys. It was disorienting. For the first time since the Hilari strike, I felt something other than rage. I felt small, like maybe there was a future that wasn't just more war. But on the 4th day, a warning alarm blared. Ships inbound, not traders, not refugees, restoration. We scrambled. Sanctum wasn't a fortress. It had a few hidden turrets, some jury-rigged shields, but nothing like the warships Holt used to command. We were a floating hospital, a farm, a prayer whispered into the void. I ran to Holt. We can't fight them, I said. I know, he replied calmly. We don't. Then what? We hold the line long enough for the civilians to scatter. We're not the monsters they made us anymore. Not here. He handed me a sidearm. Old, scratched. My name etched into the grip. I hadn't seen it since the early days of the fleet. If you want out, he said, now's your chance. I looked at the docking bay, at the shuttles loading children and elders, at the chaos of frightened faces. Then I looked back at Holt, and I stayed. When the restoration ships dropped out of FTL, they didn't announce themselves. They just began powering weapons. We powered ours, not to win, just to buy time. The first salvo hit our shields. They flickered, died. Hull breaches opened like wounds. We fired back, not at their engines, not at their life support, just at their targeting arrays, their docking clamps, anything to slow them. Minutes felt like hours. I was in the control pit, hands flying over cracked panels, rerouting power, screaming coordinates to pilots who were already dead. Holt was on the deck above, shouting orders, moving like a man half his age. One shuttle after another broke free, vanished into the storms of the gas giant below, scattering refugees into blind space where maybe, just maybe, they'd be safe. We held. We held until the deck plates glowed red and the air smelled like fire. We held until the last child was gone. Then Holt turned to me. Time to go, he said. But before I could answer, the next blast tore through the core. The deck split. He fell, caught himself on a rail. I grabbed his arm. His grip was still iron. Go, he rasped. You're not done yet. I refused, tried to pull him up. Another blast rocked the station. Metal screamed. He shoved me toward the last escape pod. Tell them, he started, coughing's blood. Tell them we weren't all monsters. Then the deck gave way. And Holt fell into the flames. I don't remember how I got to the pod. Don't remember launching, just remember the station shrinking in the viewport, restoration ships closing in, fire blooming like silent flowers. Sanctum was gone. But some of its shuttles escaped. I know they did. I saw them break atmosphere before my pod tumbled into the dark. Somewhere out there, kids who'd never known peace were carrying a seed Holt planted. And me? I was back where I started, alone, floating in the void. A weapon with no war, a man with no orders. But something had changed. For the first time in years, my rage didn't feel endless. It felt tired. And in that tiredness was a strange, fragile thing I hadn't felt since the kitchen on Earth before the Hilary strike. Hope. Not the loud kind, not the kind you shout over battle. The quiet kind. The kind that plants itself in ash and waits. Maybe Holt was right. Maybe the worst wasn't our rage. Maybe the worst was what would happen if nobody tried to be more than it. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. The pod drifted for days. No signal, no nav fix. Just the hum of failing systems and the cold breath of a man who'd watched everything burn. Again. I thought maybe this was it. That this would be my final chapter. The last warfighter of Earth, floating in the dark like a forgotten bullet after the gun's been fired. Holt was gone. Sanctum was ash. The Ashborn had fractured into warbands or ghosts. Humanity wasn't rebuilding. It was surviving, barely. That's all we ever really did, wasn't it? Survive. Not live, not thrive. Just keep crawling forward with blood in our teeth and a name no one said without flinching. Earth. The mistake the galaxy would never repeat. But fate, or some twisted version of it, wasn't finished with me yet. On the 5th day, the pod shuddered. Proximity alert. A blip on the scanner. Faint, flickering, but there. A ship. Not Restoration, not Ashborn. Civilian class. I sent out a dead man ping, coded to flag friendly or neutral old Earth responders. Took 30 seconds before I got a response. 4 words. We've been watching you. Then the tractor beam locked on. They called themselves the Rook, a private salvage ship, retrofitted for long-range scouting and deep space archaeology. No weapons to speak of, just scanning drones, AI mapping tools, and a skeleton crew of 8. They weren't soldiers, they were historians, preservationists. Their captain, a tall, sharp-eyed woman named Corin, wore no insignia. She had one synthetic leg, a voice like melted ice, and eyes that carried the same war-worn hollowness I'd seen in too many mirrors. She didn't ask who I was. She already knew. You were at Sanctum, she said when I staggered off the medbed. You knew Holt? I asked. I knew of him, she replied. He tried to start something worth saving. So do we. I didn't trust her, couldn't afford to, but I was too weak to walk away, and too sick of drifting in empty space to argue. They gave me food, real food, not paste. They gave me clean water. Let me rest. No questions. Until the 3rd day aboard. Then she brought me to the main hold. And that's where I saw it. Dozens of sealed crates, scavenged terminals, fragments of data cores, ship fragments with old Ashborn marks, and in the center, something I hadn't seen in over a decade, the original Earth Resistance archives. Logs, comms, testimonies, videos of cities before the burn, footage of Holt's early speeches before he went dark, hidden pieces of the war no one had ever seen. We've been gathering everything they erased, Corin explained. Restoration, the old council, even some of the Ashborn after they went rogue. Everyone wanted to control the narrative, make themselves the heroes, bury the bodies. I felt something stir in me. Not rage, not guilt, something else. Clarity. Why? I asked. Why dig up this mess? She smiled, bitter. Because history's the only thing stronger than fear, and someone needs to remember what really happened. I stayed with them. Didn't mean to. Didn't plan to. But days turned into weeks, and I found myself helping, sorting footage, identifying faces in shattered vids, correcting misinformation spread by restoration cells. I still didn't sleep much, still woke up reaching for a rifle that wasn't there. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't killing anything. I was preserving. And it felt right. At night, I'd sit in the archive hold and watch old transmissions, some from Holt, others from nameless soldiers, survivors, mothers, engineers, children recording last messages before the council strikes hit. One stuck with me. A boy, maybe 8, sitting in a bunker, face smeared with dust. If you find this, tell the stars we tried. I watched that clip 10 times in a row. Then I cried. Not loud, not messy, just sat there and let it happen. I hadn't cried since the day my wife and boys were turned to shadows. It didn't make the pain lighter, but it made me remember they existed. And that mattered. The Rook traveled system to system, never staying in one place long. Restoration scouts were everywhere now, hunting anything even close to old Earth remnants. Corin had a bounty on her head that made even former Ashbourne commanders blush. But she didn't care. She was building something Holt never got the chance to. A truth weapon. Something more powerful than fleets and plasma. Evidence. Proof of what was done. What we became. What the Council unleashed. And what we had the choice not to become again. And she wanted me to help finish it. "People still listen to you," she said one night. "You were there, at the start, at the worst. If you speak, they'll listen." I didn't want to be a voice. I wanted to disappear. But disappearing hadn't done any good so far. So I said yes. We compiled it into a single archive. We called it The Black Echo. It wasn't propaganda. It was ugly. Raw, filled with guilt, blood, screams, and truths that burned. Holt's worst orders, council betrayals, Sanctum's fall, children dying in orbit, entire civilizations crumbling under the weight of fear and revenge. It was honest, and it hurt to make. But when it was done, I recorded one final message, one last entry from a broken soldier who'd helped destroy a galaxy and had nothing left to lose. Here's what I said. "My name doesn't matter. You've heard 100 versions of me, hero, butcher, survivor. None of them are true. I was there when Earth burned. I was there when we made them pay. And I was there when the fire went too far. You think vengeance is power, that striking back makes you strong. But the truth? It just makes you less. The stars are quiet now, but that silence wasn't earned. It was taken, with blood, with fire, and with the screams of those who never got to speak. If you find this, don't make the same mistakes. Don't let rage speak for you. Don't become what you swore you'd never be. And if someone tells you Earth was a monster, tell them this: Earth was hurt, Earth was angry, but Earth remembers. And remembering is the only way we become more than our scars. We broadcast the Black Echo on every dead frequency. We hid it inside abandoned satellites, buried it in comboys, slipped it into derelict trade beacons. We knew Restoration would try to erase it. But truth has teeth, and once it bites, it doesn't let go. Whispers started. Small at first. Whole sectors went dark after intercepting the file. Restoration commanders defected. Ashbourne rogues began surrendering. Some colonies stopped flying flags entirely, choosing instead to display the new mark Corin had designed, a broken circle with light bleeding through the crack. They called it the Hollow Sun. Not a symbol of victory, a symbol of survival and of learning. I stayed on the Rook for 3 more months. Then one night, I told Corin I was leaving. "There's still one place I need to go," I said. "Earth?" she guessed. I nodded. "Even if there's nothing left, I need to see it one last time." She didn't try to stop me, didn't say goodbye. She just hugged me. No words. Just warmth, like something human, like something we'd all forgotten how to do. Earth wasn't the blue jewel it once was. It was cracked, battered, tired. But it was still there. And when I landed, in what used to be the Midwest, I found something I hadn't seen in decades. Green, grass, life pushing up through ash. a single tree growing in a crater, and beside it, a child's toy, half melted, half buried. I picked it up, held it, and wept, for the first time, not out of rage, not out of guilt, but out of memory. The galaxy might forget. But I won't. We were fire once. Now we are echoes. But even echoes in the right place can become a voice again. And mine says this: we are still here. We are still human. And we are learning. I stayed on Earth longer than I thought I would. I came for closure. Thought maybe I'd walk the old ground, pay my respects to the dead, maybe find the last place I saw my wife and kids and dig a hole deep enough to bury the guilt. But Earth wasn't interested in closure. She was healing, painfully, unevenly, like an old fighter waking up with broken bones but choosing to stand anyway. The cities were still gone. The skyline where I once held my sons up to point at the blinking towers was nothing but rusted beams and collapsed concrete. But down below, in the dirt, something moved. Life. Not much. Not organized. Just small clusters of people rebuilding with their hands instead of weapons. Refugees who'd drifted back from old orbital stations. Farmers who figured they might as well try. Even a few ex-Ashborn who were just done with running. I joined them, not because I believed in some grand second chance, but because I didn't have anywhere else left to go. The settlement we called Redwake was a misnomer. There was no red and no water, just the remains of a mining facility buried half in the ground with a cracked reactor core we'd patched up using parts from a downed Hilari drone. It wasn't safe. Nothing ever was. But it was ours. My job was perimeter watch. Old habits die hard. I set up motion sensors, hand-built a surveillance grid with tripwire drones, rigged the entrance road with sonic alarms. I trained a few of the older teens how to shoot, reluctantly, in case something came crawling out of the dark that still remembered the war. But mostly I stayed quiet. Didn't tell them who I used to be. Didn't say my name. Just kept my head down and built. There was a woman there, Mara. Tough, tired, ran the food operations. She had one cybernetic hand and eyes like she hadn't cried in 10 years. First time she saw me checking the outer fence, she just said, "Soldier?" I nodded. She didn't ask whose side. She didn't have to. "We're all just trying to be human again," she said, and walked away. A few weeks later, a kid came running. I was replacing a sensor grid when he sprinted up the hill, cheeks red, panting hard. Ship, inbound, south sky. I didn't panic. Just grabbed the binocs, checked the vector, civilian pattern, rough. No formal ID, drifting slower than most pirates would fly. But I saw the mark etched on the underbelly, half-burned, faded. The hollow sun. I told them not to shoot. We waited, guns down, as the ship groaned its way through the clouds and landed in a swirl of dust. A ramp hissed open, and out stepped Corin, alive, smiling like a woman who'd walked through hell and come out with calluses instead of scars. She hugged me without words, then stepped aside. Behind her were 12 people, 6 human, 2 Zalvarin, 1 Dreth, 3 Norshi, all with worn eyes and empty hands. "Survivors," she said. "They heard the signal." I helped settle them in. Gave them beds, food, some safety, no lectures, no speeches, just a place to be. And for the first time in years, I felt something in my chest that wasn't grief or rage or guilt. It was small, fragile, but real. Hope. It didn't last. Not because of them, because of what followed. 2 nights after the newcomers arrived, I picked up a signal bouncing off one of our old recon buoys. The encryption was rudimentary, Restoration-era tech, sloppily copied from old Ashborn code. But the message was clear. Phase 2 initiated, Earth settlements located, mobilizing units, eliminate all Hollow Sun sympathizers. They were coming. Again. The war wasn't over. Just paused. We held a meeting that night. the first real one since I arrived. About 30 of us, all gathered in the broken mess hall beneath the old reactor dome. The air smelled like oil and ash. Someone passed out tea in cracked mugs. Mara stood beside me. Corin stood in front of us, arms crossed. "We knew this day would come," she said. "Restoration didn't die. It just got quiet." Someone asked what we were supposed to do. Fight? Flee? Hide? "We do what we've always done," I said quietly. "We survive, but this time we don't run." I saw the fear in their eyes, the silence, the old ghost of war drifting back into the room like smoke from a long-dead fire. Then Mara stepped forward. "I didn't bury my kids just to run from ghosts. If we fall here, on our terms." No one cheered, but no one left either. We fortified Redwake. Not like the old days. No warships, no orbital cannons. Just homemade barricades, hidden defense turrets, trenches, and grit. I trained anyone willing to hold a weapon. Corin boosted the signal on the Black Echo, rebroadcasting it in every direction as a warning. Mara organized rationing, fallback routes, and evacuation tunnels. We weren't soldiers anymore, but we remembered how to bleed, and how to make it count. When they came fast. Restoration dropships. Armored, efficient, brutal, painted black with silver claw marks. No insignia, just one word pulsing on their hulls in red digital script. Cleanse. I stood on the western hilltop with a modified plasma repeater and a scoped drone controller in my other hand. The sky was thick with ash from old forest fires, and the sunset made everything look like it was bleeding. Behind me were 32 survivors, not warriors, just people. But they stood tall, and that was enough. The first wave hit hard. 12 combat drones. 6 exosuit infantry, 1 anti-personnel tank. We lost the North Barrier in the first 3 minutes, but we held the line. We used trip mines built from old reactor coils, hacked into their targeting arrays mid-fire. I watched Mara take down a drone with nothing but a repurposed farming spike and zero hesitation. Corin set off a sonic disruptor at point blank. Blew out 2 soldier suits. One caught her shoulder. She kept fighting. I took a round to the thigh, still kept firing, because this wasn't about strategy. It was about saying, "You will not erase us again." When the second wave stalled, I called in our last defense. Something I'd rigged weeks ago, just in case. A pulse beacon buried under the old crater. It triggered a seismic burst, knocking the rest of the dropships out of their hover grid. Their engines flared, then died. And we rained fire down on them until only smoke and silence remained. When it ended, the air smelled like scorched steel and burned dirt. We'd lost 6 people, but we were still standing. Redwake still lived. Earth, broken, battered, haunted Earth, still resisted. That night we buried the dead under the tree I'd found when I first landed, the one growing out of the crater. We placed their names on stone markers, carved by hand. No eulogies, just silence and stars. Later, Corin found me staring at the graves. "You could have left," she said. "I've done enough leaving," I replied. She nodded. "They'll come again." I looked at the stars, then at the earth, and I said, "Then we'll teach them again what happens when you try to kill something that refuses to die. We are not what we were. We are not the monsters the galaxy made us. We are not innocent, but we are still here, and we are still human, even if we have to remember what that means, one broken piece at a time." The quiet after the last battle wasn't peaceful. It was thick, heavy. The kind of silence you feel in your chest, like pressure from an old wound that never really healed. Redwake was still standing. Barely. Smoke still curled from the fields. Half our sensors were down. The medbay overflowed with blood-soaked bandages, and the scent of burning alloy still hung in the air. But we'd survived. And in the ashes of another failed extermination, something unexpected took root. Visitors, not just drifters or wounded ex-soldiers, messengers, wanderers, curious outcasts from systems we thought had turned their backs on Earth forever. They came with no weapons, no fleet, just questions. They'd heard the Black Echo, heard whispers of Red Wake. They saw the mark of the hollow sun and wanted to know what it meant. Corin handled them better than I ever could. She had patience, I had scars. But eventually they came to me anyway. I wasn't famous, but I was known. The one who didn't stop. The last son of Earth who fought to the bitter end and kept going even after the blood dried. They wanted to hear my side. Not the official version, not the council lies, not the Ashbourne propaganda. The truth. So I told them. All of it. I told them about Earth before it burned. How we weren't perfect, far from it. But we were building something human. A civilization with scars, but still reaching for the stars. I told them about the Hilari strike, the vote, the betrayal, the genocide disguised as policy. I told them how we begged, how they laughed, and how, in return, we gave them silence. One planet at a time. Not because we wanted power, but because when someone kills your family and spits on the grave, rage becomes all that's left. And then I told them the part they weren't ready for. What we did after. The things we destroyed. The people we turned away. The innocent we buried because we couldn't risk another betrayal. They listened. Some with pity. Some with horror. Some with understanding. Because deep down, they all knew the truth. If it had been their world, they might have done the same. A year passed. Red Wake grew. Not fast, not clean, but steadily. We built new turbines from broken drone parts, dug proper irrigation channels, planted crops that hadn't grown on Earth in 30 years. The soil remembered, even if we had forgotten. Other settlements reached out, tentatively. Most were still afraid of the restoration. Some feared us, and I didn't blame them. Even now, part of me wanted another war. The silence still made me twitch. Peace always felt like the kind of quiet that came before an ambush. But I was trying to be something other than a weapon. One night, Mara joined me on the hill overlooking the crater, now a grove of young trees, the burial site. She handed me a flask. Didn't ask questions, just sat. Eventually, she said, "They say you used to be a monster." I nodded. "Still am. Just better at hiding it." She smiled, but it was the kind you make when you're thinking about people you miss. "I don't care what you were," she said. "I care about what you protect." We drank in silence. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was borrowing peace. I felt like I might belong to it. 2 months later, the final message arrived. Not a threat, not a warning, a meeting request, signed by a council of Outer Rim species, survivors, neutral factions, a new coalition rising from the galactic ruins, trying to rebuild something, not based on dominance or control or fear, but truth. They invited Corin, Mara, and me. They called it the Circle of Atonement. The name made my stomach twist. But Corin insisted. "If we don't speak for Earth," she said, "someone else will." So I went. The meeting place was a former war memorial orbiting the shattered remains of an old Hilari moon, a ring-shaped structure once dedicated to galactic peace, now stripped bare. We arrived in a civilian ship with no escort, no weapons, just voices. Inside, they gathered 23 species, council remnants, free colonies, even a few former restoration defectors. No podiums, no speeches, just a table. We sat, no guards, no translators, just honesty. And I spoke, not as a representative, not as a general, Just a man who had lost everything, burned everything, and came back with nothing but memories. "You asked for truth," I began. "You're not going to like it." They didn't interrupt. So I told them. "You built a galaxy on the assumption that humans were beneath you, that we'd fall in line, that our emotions made us unstable, that our fire was dangerous. You were right about one thing: the fire. We warned you, we asked, we begged. But when you kill billions and call it policy, you don't get to act shocked when we bury you in return." A few flinched. Most stared. "But we went too far." My voice cracked on that one. "We turned vengeance into religion, made fury our anthem, and in doing so, we lost parts of ourselves we may never get back." I looked at Corin, then at the others. But we're still here. Not as conquerors, not as survivors. As witnesses. We remember what you did, and what we became because of it. And we won't let either be forgotten. The silence after I finished was the kind that doesn't ask for applause. It just settles. Then the Dreth ambassador, a species who lost half their colonies during the Restoration, leaned forward. "What do you want now?" I didn't blink. "Nothing. We're not asking for land, or reparations, or apologies. We just want to be left the hell alone. But if anyone tries to erase us again, if another council rises and calls Earth a threat, you'll remember what happens next." They voted. Not unanimous. But enough. Earth would be recognized, not as a threat, but as sovereign, independent, off-limits, no alliances, no control, just peace. The first time in 100 years that word felt like it might not be a lie. We returned to Red Wake. 2 months later, a small ship landed carrying soil samples from a planet I'd never heard of. A colony wanted to trade. Real trade. No chains, no fear. Just people trying to build instead of bury. And a year after that, I helped plant the first tree outside the crater grove. A real one, from earth seed. Roots taking hold in scarred ground. The kids ran past me as I watched it, laughter echoing like it used to in my kitchen long ago. I felt something crack in my chest. Not pain, not grief, just relief. The war was over. For now, maybe not forever, but for now. And if one day the stars burn again, if someone forgets what happened, they'll find the hollow sun etched into stone, and beneath it, the words I had carved with my own hand: "We were fire, then we were ash, now we are roots. Do not make us burn again.